G'day and welcome to Christmas Cooking with Indiana Joe, if that's what we're calling this. But anyway, one of the things that I love to do is cook, particularly around Christmas time. And with creation research, it's a very stressful job sometimes. It's a very full-on job. And one of the ways that I will always relax is to come and cook, whether it be roasts or curries or whatever. And a few years ago, I developed a new way to cook a certain Christmas vegetable. That particular vegetable in question is, of course, sprouts. The classic love them or hate them. And they've become a staple for me anyway, because I think they're fantastic. They've become a staple for me in roasts, in Christmas dinner and all sorts, but they really have become the sort of the joke of the Christmas dinner. Now, what I want to do today is show you the way that I cook sprouts, because it will revolutionise the way that you have them and eat them. But there's actually a really interesting creation principle as well, the old creation versus evolution principle, to do with sprouts, and that has everything to do with this basket of veg that I have here. And this basket of veg is a variety of veg. We've got cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, sprouts, the spring greens, and yet all of these are the same plant. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But for now, your Christmas sprout. What do most people do? Well, most people will get your sprout, you trim off the end, give it a little peel off the few outer leaves, and then that sprout comes over here to the stove top, where you simply plop it in to your boiling water. And of course the problem with that is that when you come to actually eating those sprouts, as with a lot of boiled vegetables, they tend to be just a little bit mushy. They tend to have lost their flavour. Now, a lot of people might think that's a good thing to do with sprouts, the fact that they've lost their flavour. But let's be honest. A lot of us don't like a lot of vegetables if they're in their raw state because they are bitter or harsh. Think about onions, right? Now, a lot of onions are bred to be particularly bitter, to be particularly acidic. But if you take that onion and you cook it by frying it, you are retaining the natural sweetness and the natural taste of the onion, but you're removing the bitterness. Well, the other way that you'll cook sprouts is by roasting them with your Christmas dinner. But again, it can be quite hard to get it right, simply because you're cooking them with all of your other vegetables, root vegetables like your potatoes, or you're cooking them with your meats, and it will just take too long and you'll end up with burnt or charred or, again, overcooked sprouts. So how do I do it? Well, think about that roasting principle and think about that frying principle. If you fry them, you lock in the natural sweetness and the natural flavour, and once you have fat added, you can add flavour to your vegetables as well. And so thinking through this principle one day, I came up with this way of cooking sprouts, which involves one of the greatest meats known to mankind, bacon. So let me take you through the process while we also have a little bit about a chat about evolution and cabbages. Now, the chopping board. We have our sprouts and we're going to start by preparing them. And to do that, we take our sprout and we just take the bottom off, remove that bit, and just remove a few of the outer leaves. And there's your prepared sprout. And then with our nicely peeled sprout, what we want to do is take our knife and just cut it completely in half, like that. Now, over here, we have our baking tray. And what we're going to do is take our sprouts and lie them cut side down on the tray. And we're going to go through and basically repeat that for all of our peeled sprouts. So just going to take them and then lie them down nice and flat on the tray. Now, of course, the great thing about this is that all this prep work can be done the night before. So if you're at Christmas or at Thanksgiving, it's always worth trying to prep stuff earlier, as I'm sure you know. And all this can be done the night before, because we can just stick this in the fridge with a little bit of foil over it, or a little bit of cling film, and it'll survive until the next day quite nicely. And of course this is great not just for Christmas but for general roast dinners as well, or for Thanksgiving. We're just lining up all of our sprouts on the tray like this. We are putting no fat on the tray. No oil, no butter, no fat. That's quite important. So sprouts, what's their origin? Well, there's some different ideas. Some people believe that they first started coming into existence in the early 1300s. Some people believe that they weren't really into predominance until much later. One thing we know for sure, though, the thing which really started to popularise it was Napoleon's armies. Why? Because Napoleon came marching through and he chopped all the heads off the cabbages. It was a way of starving people, a form of biological warfare, if you like. And of course the cabbages did what cabbages do, which is grow a larger stalk if they've had their heads taken off of them, and sprout little cabbages out of the sides. Hence the Brussels sprout. But the remarkable thing about our sprouts and their connection to creation is that these tiny little cabbages that sprout out of the side are exactly the same species as a cauliflower. And in fact the cauliflower, as we have over here, is exactly the same species as the broccoli. And that's the same species as the red cabbage. And that's the same species as your spring greens and your normal cabbages and your, well, it goes on and on. Pak choy as well. It's all kohlrabi. They're all the same species. Brassica oleracea is the name. Now, you just have a look at the basket here at the large amount of diversity that we have in just one singular species. And they're all the result of artificial breeding. So, of course, if you get your wild cabbage, your Brassica oleracea, which is found growing in the wilds of the English countryside today, or the sea cabbage as well, and if you take that and you breed it to taste nicer, you end up with your spring greens. If you breed it to produce a much larger head, you have your cabbage. If you genetically select it to only produce very, very dark leaves, you end up with your red cabbage. If you breed it to produce a large flower head, you produce a broccoli. If you take that broccoli and you effectively breed it into a mutation, so you end up with a mutated colourless flower head, you end up with the cauliflower. If you breed it to have a large elongated stem, you end up with the swede or the kohlrabi. These are all the same plant, all the same species. And this enormous amount of diversity just within the cabbage family, if you like, is found in a singular species. They're different breeds of the same species. Now, what this is an example of twofold. Number one, it's an example of the enormous amount of genetic diversity that can be found in living things. You can produce a cauliflower and a Brussels sprout, two polar opposite looking vegetables from exactly the same species. And they're regarded the same species because they're not different enough to be regarded as different species. But there's another reason why they're regarded the same species. And this is because if you leave a broccoli or a sprout or a cauliflower to its own devices as a plant, and it continues to breed on its own without human intervention, what you will end up seeing is that these plants, these vegetables, will breed themselves back into the original wild cabbage, Brassica oleracea. In other words, it takes an intelligent designer, i.e. the farmer, to continue to breed his cabbages and cauliflower and broccoli and sprouts. Left to their own devices, they will revert back to their natural form. Now that's just fascinating, because not only does it tell us that there is an incredible amount of genetic diversity inside these cabbages, but it also tells us that they're designed to not evolve. Sure, they can adapt and change. Sure, they can be bred into a whole variety of different vegetables, but they still inherit that same base DNA that codes for the wild cabbage. And it doesn't matter what you do, they will either go to extinction or continue to use that DNA code to go back to the wild cabbage, Brassica oleracea. In other words, in over 5,000 years worth of known human agricultural history, we've never seen a single piece of evidence for evolution whatsoever. Agriculture really is the longest running experiment that humans have ever done. We're told that after mankind fell, that God told Adam he had to now work for his food, but even before then, in the garden, he was given the job of a gardener. He was given the job of looking after the garden and tending it. So man's first job was a giant experiment to play around with growing vegetables. We're told that Cain and Abel were both farmers. So in well over 5,000 years of recorded history, we've got no evidence of evolution. Lots of evidence of change, lots of evidence of immense diversity within a created kind, but no evidence of evolution whatsoever. Pretty amazing what you can learn from a simple Brussels sprout. Now you want to fill it as much as possible, but you do want all of your sprouts to be nice and flat on the bottom of the tray. So I think maybe just one or two more in there. I'll get one more in, I reckon. Let's do one more. There we go. Put them in. Wiggle them around. Just see what we can do. Think like excellent. Okay. Now we have our sprouts laid out on our tray, all touching the bottom, no oil whatsoever. Now we introduce our bacon. Now this is streaky bacon. Now this is more closer to what the Americans would know as bacon than what we typically call bacon over here. Our back bacon is nice thick rashers. Now we want smoky bacon or streaky bacon. It can be unsmoked, but we do want streaky bacon, and the reason we want streaky bacon is because of those streaks. Those streaks are full of fat, and it's the bacon fat that's going to cook the sprouts. We are roasting them while basting them in bacon fat. And as a result of that, they will not only mellow and sweeten in their own juices, because we're not boiling them and diluting them, but they will be cooked evenly because of the bacon fat heat, but they will be infused with that bacon flavour. We are making bacon basted sprouts. So we take our streaky bacon, If you get it from the butcher's, you can ask to have it fairly thickly cut, because you do want it fairly thickly cut. And what we are doing is we are going to lay our streaky bacon out over our sprouts, and you want to make sure that they are completely covered. You do not want any sprouts to be exposed. We are completely covering our sprouts with streaky bacon. There we go. Just get them completely covered all over. And of course, again, you can do this part the night before, because you can keep this in the fridge overnight, no problem at all. We're just covering up all of our sprouts and letting them over here. Now, when it comes to cooking these, we'll take you through the cooking of this in a moment. But again, there's an ideal scenario here. Whether you're cooking a roast, or whether you're cooking a Christmas dinner or a Thanksgiving dinner, whatever meat you're cooking typically should be rested for 20 to 30 minutes at least. If it's a big turkey, sometimes even longer. If it's a big roast joint of beef, sometimes even longer. Certainly for chicken, about 20 to 30 minutes. And 20 to 30 minutes is pretty much exactly what this needs to cook. So of course the ideal is you take it, you take your turkey out or your roast meat out, you leave it to rest, and this goes in on the top oven. And by the time your meat is rested and ready to be served, your sprouts are ready also. Take your last bits of bacon, trim them, and fill in any gaps. We are completely covering our sprouts in bacon. So think about what's going to happen when we put this in. The bacon fat is going to render. It's a chef's term which just basically means melt down. It's going to run over the sprouts and it's going to cook them. Because we have completely covered the sprouts themselves are not going to be exposed to the harsh heat of the oven, so they are also going to steam within themselves while being basted with the bacon fat. They're going to mellow, sweeten, and they're going to infuse with that bacon flavour. And so you don't get that typical harshness or bitterness that you often associate with sprouts as Christmas. You don't get the mushiness or the gunkiness as it kind of mushes around in your mouth because they've been boiled. They're not going to be harsh and burnt. They are going to be just beautiful. So, meat has come out. In goes the bacon sprouts. Top level of your oven, and 180 to 200 degrees, depending whether it's a fan oven or not. About your average cooking temperature for the rest of your things if you're finishing off your potatoes or whatever. So, into the oven. All right, half an hour until we see the results. And of course, this is the time when you're finishing your potatoes in the oven, you're making your gravy, your meat is resting, you're preparing the table, you're starting to get everything together. 20 to 30 minutes later, just as you're about to serve, out come the sprouts. You're all prepared, your guests are here. Meat's been resting, and the sprouts are ready. There we go. Beautiful thing is bacon. So what we do now, very simple. We just take the bacon off the top. comes off. We will use the bacon. And what we do is we get our serving dish here. In go all the sprouts. Now you can actually see here, because the bacon will shrink, and one or two of the sprouts are on the edge of court, but the ones in the middle just glide off brilliantly. And they're beautifully caramelised on the bottom. Look at that. So you get all our sprouts into a bowl. Leave that bacon. So we have sprouts that are caramelised, that are cooked to perfection, they're not mushy. They have been basted in bacon fat, so they taste glorious. And the great thing about this is that there's no need for seasonings, there's no need for extra salt or oil or any of that, because the bacon provides it all. It provides the salt, it provides the fat, all of it. Okay, there's our sprouts. Now the bacon. We take the bacon, still quite warm, take our knife, and what we've done is, because it's the bacon that's been exposed to the heat, the bacon has got crispy. And so what we're just going to do is just run our knife through, chop up the bacon. Take the bacon, and the bacon goes on the top. Now, in an ideal world, I would have taken out a larger pot, or I'd have done 2 dishes, so that the bacon could be spread around a little bit more, but that's alright. That way you get a better bacon to sprout ratio. So you'd slice up the rest of the bacon, spread that around on top. So now what you end up with, get our serving spoon, ideal for the table, so that when you come along you end up with sprouts which are beautifully seasoned, beautifully basted, mixed with bacon as well, and is just the most amazing thing. So there you go, my bacon basted sprouts, perfect for roast, for Christmas or for Thanksgiving. And remember, be grateful to God that he designed plants to change but not evolve, because it produces the most glorious variety that we see in the world around us. I'm Indiana Joe, and I will see you next time. Probably not for another cooking program, but who knows. See you later, folks.